Jin loved the night sky more than anything else in the world. Every clear night, he would climb the steps to the university observatory and gaze at the stars for hours. Tonight was no different. Just me and the universe again, Jin said to himself as he adjusted the large telescope. At 24, Jin was the youngest graduate student in the astrophysics program. He was smart but shy. Other students went to parties on Friday nights. Jin preferred the quiet company of distant stars. The observatory dome was cold. Jin pulled his jacket tighter and checked the time. 11:43 p.m. He should go home soon, but the sky was so clear tonight. He decided to stay a little longer. That's when he saw it, a bright streak of light cutting across the night sky. Then another, and another. A meteor shower, Jin whispered, quickly adjusting the telescope. But these weren't normal meteors. They moved too slowly, and one seemed to change direction. The largest light grew brighter, leaving a blue trail behind it. Jin watched in amazement as it descended toward the woods near campus. It wasn't burning up like a meteor should. Instead, it slowed down before disappearing below the tree line. Jin's heart raced. Whatever fell wasn't a rock from space. It had controlled its landing. Without thinking, Jin grabbed his backpack, flashlight, and phone. He ran down the stairs and out into the cool night air. The woods were only a mile away. This is crazy, he told himself as he jogged along the empty road. It's probably nothing. But he kept going. The woods were dark and quiet. Jin followed the direction where he'd seen the light disappear. After 20 minutes of searching, he smelled something strange, like burnt metal and sweet flowers. Then he saw it, a path of broken branches leading downhill. Jin followed carefully, his flashlight beam bouncing through the trees. In a small clearing stood a shiny object about the size of a car. It was oval-shaped with no sharp edges. Steam rose from its surface. Part of its side had a dark, damaged area. "It's a ship," Jin whispered. "An actual spaceship." As he stepped closer, a section of the ship slid open. Jin froze. He should run. He should call someone. Instead, he stood still, watching as a figure stumbled out and collapsed onto the ground. Jin moved his flashlight beam. The figure was shaped like a human, but clearly not human. Its skin shimmered with a blue-purple glow. It appeared female, with a face that looked almost human except for large, almond-shaped eyes and small ridges along her temples. She was hurt. Dark liquid. Was it blood? Seeped from a wound on her arm. She looked up at Jin, her eyes wide with fear. Jin slowly put down his flashlight. "I won't hurt you," he said, though he knew she probably couldn't understand him. The alien tried to move away but winced in pain. Jin opened his backpack and took out his first aid kit. He always carried one, a habit from when his parents were alive. He showed it to her. "I can help," he said slowly, pointing to her wound. The alien watched him carefully. Then she reached for something at her belt and held up a small disc. It glowed, and a soft voice came from it. "Help. Danger. Please." Jin nodded and moved closer, opening the first aid kit. His hand shook as he cleaned her wound and applied pressure to stop the bleeding. The alien's blood was darker than human blood, with tiny specks that seemed to glow. "My name is Jin," he said quietly. The alien touched her device again. "Nari," she responded, her voice weak but clear through the translator. As Jin bandaged her arm, he realized his life would never be the same. Something extraordinary had happened in these woods. The universe he had always watched from a distance had finally reached back to him. And her name was Nari. "Hide in the bathroom," Jin whispered to Nari. She moved quickly despite her injury. Jin took a deep breath and opened the door, keeping the security chain on. "Yes?" he asked, trying to sound sleepy. The campus security guard spoke first. "Sorry to bother you, but we need to check all apartments in this area. There was a report of a meteor last night." The two men in suits stood behind the guard. Their faces were too perfect, like masks. "I was at the observatory until late, But I didn't see anything unusual, Jin lied. I have a big test today. Can this wait? One of the suited men stepped forward. His movements were stiff. This will only take a moment, he said. His voice had a strange echo. Jin's mind raced. I need to see some ID first. The men exchanged glances. We will return with proper documentation, the second man said. They turned and walked away too quickly. The security guard gave Jin an apologetic shrug and followed them. Jin closed the door and locked it. His hands were shaking. They're gone for now, he told Nari as she came out of the bathroom. But we can't stay here. Jin called the only person he trusted. Hyun answered on the third ring, sounding half asleep. Jin, it's 7 a.m. on Saturday. Hyun, I need your help. It's an emergency. Can I come to your place? And I'm bringing someone. There was a pause. Is this about a girl? Did you finally? It's not what you think. Jin cut him off. Please, Hyun. Okay. You know where I live. Jin packed a bag with clothes and his laptop. Nari had a small device from her ship. It looked damaged. What's that? Jin asked. Communication tool, Nari explained. To contact my people, but broken in crash. They left through the back stairs. Jin led Nari across campus, taking paths with fewer people. They reached Hyun's apartment 20 minutes later. Hyun opened the door with a smirk that vanished when he saw Nari. His mouth fell open. Inside, quickly, Jin urged. Once inside, Jin explained everything while Hyun stared at Nari in amazement. You expect me to believe she's an alien princess? Hyun asked. Nari touched her translator. Show him, Jin. Jin hesitated, then nodded. Nari rolled up her sleeve. The markings on her arm began to glow brightly. Then she touched a spot near her wrist. A small hologram appeared above her palm, showing strange planets and stars. That's... wow, Hyun whispered. Okay, I believe you now. Hyun was a computer science genius. He examined Nari's communication device with excitement. The design is amazing. I might be able to fix this with the right tools. Over the next few days, they settled into a routine. Hyun worked on the device. Jin taught Nari about Earth customs and language. Nari shared knowledge about space that made Jin's research theories suddenly make sense. The way your people understand gravity is simple, Nari explained, drawing diagrams that Jin copied eagerly. Jin's professor noticed the change in his work. These equations are remarkable, Jin, Professor Lee said during their weekly meeting. Where did these ideas come from? Just a new perspective, Jin answered carefully. The professor studied him. You seem different lately. More alive. That night, Jin realized it was true. For the first time since losing his parents, he felt connected to someone. Nari wasn't just a princess he was helping. She was becoming a friend. As Hyun made progress on the communication device, Nari shared more about her world. Jin found himself dreaming of stars that weren't on any Earth map. What they didn't know was that the hunters had infiltrated the university system. They were tracking energy signatures from Nari's technology, and they were getting closer every day. 1 week had passed since Nari crashed on Earth. Hyun's apartment became their safe place. Nari's wound was healing well. Her skin glowed brighter each day. I fixed part of your device, Hyun said, showing Nari the communication tool. But I can't make it send messages to space yet. Nari smiled. You have done well, Hyun. My people would be impressed by your skills. Jin entered the room with coffee for everyone. I have news. The university is buzzing about 2 new government researchers asking questions about unusual energy readings. The hunters, Nari said, her face growing serious. They are very good at tracking. Jin sat beside her. We need to be more careful. I think they're scanning the whole campus now. That night, as Hyun slept, Jin found Nari looking out the window at the stars. Do you miss home? Jin asked. Nari nodded. My grandmother is the only family I have left. I don't know if she survived the coup. Jin understood loss. I was 19 when my parents died. The hardest part was having no one left. Nari turned to him. There is something I must tell you, Jin. She touched her translator device. My people can form special bonds with those we trust. A connection of minds. I think I am forming one with you. What do you mean? Jin asked. Have you felt things that weren't yours? Dreams of places you've never seen? Feelings that come suddenly? Jin thought about the strange dreams of unknown planets and the moments when he seemed to know what Neri was thinking. Yes, he admitted. Is that bad? No, Neri said. It is rare and precious. It means our minds are compatible. It could help protect us both. The next morning, Jin had to go to the physics lab for an important test. He couldn't miss it without raising suspicion. Be careful, Neri said as he left. I feel something is wrong today. Jin felt it too, a strange nervousness that didn't seem to be his own. At the lab, Jin noticed one of the suited men from before, pretending to be a maintenance worker. The man had a device hidden in his tool belt. It flashed blue when Jin walked past. Jin hurried through his test and was about to leave when Professor Lee stopped him. Jin, I'd like you to meet someone. He's very interested in your recent work on gravity waves. Standing beside the professor was the second hunter, smiling with two perfect teeth. I've heard great things about you, the hunter said, extending his hand. Jin felt a sudden wave of fear, not his own, but Neri's. Somehow, she knew he was in danger. Sorry, I have an emergency, Jin said, backing away. He ran from the building, taking the strange path through campus. He could feel Neri guiding him somehow. He knew exactly which ways to turn to avoid the hunter who was now following him. Jin reached Hyun's apartment, breathing hard. We have to go, he said the moment Hyun opened the door. They found me at the lab. Neri was already packing their few belongings. I felt your fear. I saw him through your eyes. How is that possible? Hyun asked. The bond, Neri explained. It grows stronger. They slipped out the back door just as a black car pulled up in front of the building. As they hurried away, Jin looked back. 4 men in suits were entering the building. Their movements were too smooth, too coordinated. Where can we go now? Hyun asked. Jin thought quickly. The observatory. No one uses it during the day, and I have a key. As they walked quickly across campus, staying under tree cover, Neri took Jin's hand. A warm feeling spread through him. Courage, and something else he couldn't name. The bond will help us, she said quietly. But there is more I must tell you about what it means. The observatory was quiet and dark. Jin locked the door behind them and turned on a small desk lamp. The large dome above them was closed, hiding them from view. We should be safe here for a while, Jin said. No classes today. Hyun set up his laptop. I'll try to finish fixing the communication device. Neri sat on a bench near the telescope. Jin joined her, feeling her worry through their growing bond. You said there was more to tell me about this connection between us, Jin reminded her. Neri nodded. My people have an old tradition called the Royal Protocol. When royalty is in danger, they can form a special bond with a protector. Like a bodyguard? Hyun asked, listening while he worked. More than that, Neri explained. The bond makes them family under our laws. It is permanent and sacred. Jin felt his heart beat faster. And that's what's happening between us. Yes, Neri said. But it is not complete yet. The full bond must be chosen willingly by both people. It has never been done with someone not from my world. She reached into her small bag and pulled out a crystal that glowed with soft blue light. This is from my ship. It is part of the royal seal. With it, we could complete the bond in the traditional way. Jin stared at the crystal. What would that mean? For both of us. We would be connected always. You would have rights as my family. My people would have to protect you. She looked down. But you would be tied to me forever. Hyun whistled softly. That's a big decision, Jin. Jin thought about his life before meeting Neri. Empty apartments, lonely nights, stars that felt so far away. And now, this connection to something greater. What happens if we don't complete the bond? He asked. The hunters will take me back. My cousin will have me killed. The connection we already have will fade slowly, painfully. Her voice was calm, but Jin could feel her fear. There must be another way, Hyun said. Maybe if I can fix this device. A sound from outside made them all freeze. Footsteps on the stairs. Jin moved quickly to the small window. Two men in suits were approaching the observatory. Behind them was Professor Lee, pointing toward the building. They're here, Jin whispered. Neri stood. We have no more time. She held out the crystal. Jin, I would never force this choice on you. But if you accept, the bond might help us escape. Jin looked at the crystal, then at Neri. In just days, she had changed everything for him. He felt more alive than he had in years. What do I need to do? He asked. Hold the crystal with me. Open your mind to mine completely. Jin took one side of the crystal, while Neri held the other. The blue light grew brighter. I accept this bond, Neri said in her language, the translator echoing in English. Jin felt a warmth spreading from his hands through his body. In his mind, images flashed rapidly. A beautiful world with 3 moons, great crystal cities, Nari as a child running through gardens of strange flowers. I accept this bond, Jin repeated, not needing the translator to know the words. The crystal flared with light. Jin gasped as knowledge poured into him. Words of Neri's language, customs of her people, and something else, a deep sense of belonging. When the light faded, Jin felt different, stronger. The connection to Neri was clear now, like a bright thread tying them together. It is done, Neri said, her eyes shining. We are family now, by the laws of my world. The door handle rattled. Someone was trying to get in. Jin looked at Neri, then at Hyun. I have an idea. I can feel it, from the bond. For the first time since meeting Neri, Jin smiled with confidence. Let's show these hunters what happens when they threaten a human and his alien family. The door to the observatory burst open. 2 hunters entered, followed by Professor Lee, who looked confused. These men said you stole research equipment, Jin, the professor said. What's going on? Jin stepped forward. He could feel Neri's knowledge flowing through him, guiding his words. Professor, these aren't men. They're not from Earth. The professor laughed nervously. Jin, are you feeling well? The lead hunter pushed the professor aside. His face seemed to ripple slightly, like a mask not quite fitting. This does not concern you, human, he said. We have come for the princess. The second hunter pulled out a device that looked like a silver gun. Surrender her now. Jin felt no fear. The bond with Neri filled him with calm certainty. He knew things about these hunters that he shouldn't know. You are from House Moon, Jin said in Neri's language. You follow the old codes. The hunters froze in surprise. Jin continued, I am bonded to Princess Neri by the royal protocol. See the mark. Jin held up his wrist. A faint pattern glowed under his skin, matching the one on Neri's arm. The lead hunter stepped closer, examining the mark. Impossible, he said. No outsider has ever carried the royal mark. Test it if you don't believe, Neri challenged, moving to stand beside Jin. Our life forces are joined. The second hunter scanned them with his device, looking troubled. Commander, the reading confirms it. They share the same energy pattern. The bond is real. Professor Lee watched with wide eyes. Jin, what is happening? Sorry, Professor, Jin said. I got involved in something bigger than Earth physics. The lead hunter seemed uncertain now. Even if the bond is real, our orders remain. We must return the princess to face justice. Your real orders are to kill me, Neri said, My cousin fears my claim to the throne. Jin could sense the hunter's thoughts through Nari's understanding of her people. These weren't just killers. They followed a code of honor. If your orders come from a usurper, Jin said, they have no authority under your own laws. The hunters exchanged looks. Jin pressed his advantage. My bond with Nari is protected by traditions older than your current government. You know this is true. Suddenly, the second hunter raised his weapon and fired at Jin. Nari moved with incredible speed, pushing Jin aside. The energy blast hit her shoulder. Jin felt Nari's pain as if it were his own. He cried out and fell to his knees beside her. The lead hunter grabbed his companion's arm. Stop. Did you not see? The human felt her wound. The bond is genuine. The second hunter lowered his weapon, looking shocked. Jin helped Nari to her feet, his hand covering her injured shoulder. Their shared pain pulsed between them. The lead hunter made a formal gesture with his hands. This changes things. I must contact my superiors for new instructions. He stepped outside to use his communication device. The second hunter kept his weapon ready but didn't aim it at them. Hyun moved to Professor Lee, who still looked stunned. Sir, I know this is hard to believe, but we need your help. The professor nodded slowly. Aliens. Actual aliens. Then he straightened his shoulders. What can I do? Before Hyun could answer, the lead hunter returned. A diplomatic vessel has been dispatched, he announced formally. The royal protocol has been acknowledged. We will wait for higher authorities. Jin felt Nari's surprise and hope through their bond. Who authorized this? She asked. The hunter's perfect face showed the first real emotion. Respect. The message comes directly from the Queen Mother. Your grandmother lives, Princess Nari, and she has been gathering allies since your disappearance. For the first time since her crash landing, Nari's face lit up with true joy. Jin felt it wash through him like a wave of warmth. My grandmother, she whispered. She's alive. 3 days passed. Jin, Nari, Hyun, and Professor Lee waited in a remote cabin in the mountains. The hunters stood guard outside, no longer enemies but not quite friends. How long until the ship arrives? Hyun asked, looking out the window at the night sky. Soon, Nari said. I can feel it. Jin sat beside her, their bond stronger each day. He could sense her excitement and worry mixing together. Professor Lee paced the room. The university called again. I told them we're on a special research trip. Thank you for helping us, Jin said. The professor smiled. In 40 years of studying the stars, I never thought I'd meet someone from them. Late that night, Jin woke suddenly. Nari was already sitting up in bed, her eyes wide. They're here, she whispered. They all went outside. The hunters stood looking up at the sky. A large cloud was moving against the wind, growing larger as it descended. Cloaking technology, the lead hunter explained. The ship is hiding. As they watched, the clouds seemed to part. A silver ship the size of a small building appeared. It made no sound as it landed in the clearing near the cabin. It's beautiful, Hyun whispered. A door opened in the side of the ship. 3 tall figures emerged. They wore flowing robes that seemed to change color in the moonlight. Their skin had the same glow as Nari's. Nari stepped forward and bowed. The tallest visitor returned the gesture. Princess Nari. The visitor said, the words translated by a device on his wrist. Your grandmother sends her love. Tears filled Nari's eyes. Jin felt her joy through their bond. The tall visitor turned to Jin. And this is the human who carries the royal mark. Jin bowed as Nari had done. I am Jin. The visitor studied him with kind eyes. I am Ambassador Ta. We have never witnessed a bond between our people and another species. This is unprecedented. Is it a problem? Jin asked. Ambassador Ta shook his head. On the contrary, it may be our salvation. He turned to Professor Lee. Are you a leader of this world? The professor laughed nervously. No, just a teacher. We need to speak with your planet's authorities. Ambassador Ta said. This situation has become a diplomatic matter. The next day, government officials arrived in black cars. Men and women in suits met with Ambassador Tai and his team for hours. Jin and Neri waited together, their hands linked. What will happen now? Jin asked. Politics, Neri said with a small smile. My people will establish formal contact with Earth. Your world is not ready for full disclosure, but key leaders will know. Later, the ambassador called them into the meeting. We have reached an agreement, he announced. Earth authorities will classify this as a limited contact event. In exchange, we will share some basic technology. A stern woman in a dark suit spoke next. Mr. Jin, your situation is unique. According to their laws, you are now part of their royal family. Jin nodded. Through the bond, yes. The princess must return to address the political situation in her system, the ambassador explained. As her bonded protector, you should accompany her. Jin felt dizzy at the thought. Leave Earth. Go to the stars he had only studied from afar. I'll go, he said without hesitation. Hyun stepped forward. What about me? I know everything too. The ambassador and the government officials exchanged looks. We could use someone familiar with Earth technology to help establish communication protocols. Ambassador Ta suggested. The woman in the suit sighed. Another civilian to brief and contain. I volunteer, Hyun said quickly. Professor Lee looked sad. And I will stay to be your contact here. Someone should continue your research, Jin. That night, as they prepared to board the ship, Jin looked up at the stars one last time from Earth's surface. Are you afraid? Nari asked. Jin shook his head. For the first time in years, I'm not alone. I'm going to the stars with family. 3 days passed. Jin, Nari, Hyun, and Professor Lee waited in a remote cabin in the mountains. The hunters stood guard outside, no longer enemies but not quite friends. How long until the ship arrives? Hyun asked, looking out the window at the night sky. Soon, Neri said. I can feel it. Jin sat beside her, their bond stronger each day. He could sense her excitement and worry mixing together. Professor Lee paced the room. The university called again. I told them we're on a special research trip. Thank you for helping us, Jin said. The professor smiled. In 40 years of studying the stars, I never thought I'd meet someone from them. Late that night, Jin woke suddenly. Neri was already sitting up in bed, her eyes wide. They're here, she whispered. They all went outside. The hunters stood looking up at the sky. A large cloud was moving against the wind, growing larger as it descended. Cloaking technology, the lead hunter explained. The ship is hiding. As they watched, the clouds seemed to part. A silver ship the size of a small building appeared. It made no sound as it landed in the clearing near the cabin. It's beautiful, Hyun whispered. A door opened in the side of the ship. 3 tall figures emerged. They wore flowing robes that seemed to change color in the moonlight. Their skin had the same glow as Neri's. Neri stepped forward and bowed. The tallest visitor returned the gesture. Princess Neri, the visitor said, the words translated by a device on his wrist. Your grandmother sends her love. Tears filled Neri's eyes. Jin felt her joy through their bond. The tall visitor turned to Jin. And this is the human who carries the royal mark. Jin bowed as Neri had done. I am Jin. The visitor studied him with kind eyes. I am Ambassador Ta. We have never witnessed a bond between our people and another species. This is unprecedented. Is it a problem? Jin asked. Ambassador Ta shook his head. On the contrary, it may be our salvation. He turned to Professor Lee. Are you a leader of this world? The professor laughed nervously. No, just a teacher. We need to speak with your planet's authorities, Ambassador Ta said. This situation has become a diplomatic matter. The next day, government officials arrived in black cars. Men and women in suits met with Ambassador Tai and his team for hours. Jin and Neri waited together, their hands linked. "What will happen now?" Jin asked. "Politics," Neri said with a small smile. "My people will establish formal contact with Earth. Your world is not ready for full disclosure, but key leaders will know." Later, the ambassador called them into the meeting. "We have reached an agreement," he announced. "Earth authorities will classify this as a limited contact event. In exchange, we will share some basic technology." A stern woman in a dark suit spoke next. "Mr. Jin, your situation is unique. According to their laws, you are now part of their royal family." Jin nodded. "Through the bond, yes. The princess must return to address the political situation in her system," the ambassador explained. "As her bonded protector, you should accompany her." Jin felt dizzy at the thought. Leave Earth. Go to the stars he had only studied from afar. "I'll go," he said without hesitation. Hyun stepped forward. "What about me? I know everything too." The ambassador and the government officials exchanged looks. "We could use someone familiar with Earth technology to help establish communication protocols," Ambassador Ta suggested. The woman in the suit sighed. "Another civilian to brief and contain." "I volunteer," Hyun said quickly. Professor Lee looked sad. "And I will stay to be your contact here. Someone should continue your research, Jin." That night, as they prepared to board the ship, Jin looked up at the stars one last time from Earth's surface. "Are you afraid?" Nari asked. Jin shook his head. "For the first time in years, I'm not alone. I'm going to the stars with family." The embassy ship left Earth quietly in the night. Jin and Hyun watched through a large window as their home planet grew smaller and smaller. "I never thought I'd see Earth from space," Hyun said, his voice filled with wonder. Jin nodded. "Me neither." The ship moved faster than any human spacecraft. Soon, Earth was just a blue dot among the stars. Jin felt a mix of sadness and excitement. Through their bond, he knew Nari felt his emotions. "You will see Earth again," she promised, joining them at the window. "This is not goodbye forever." The journey would take 2 weeks. During this time, Jin and Hyun learned about Nari's world. They attended daily lessons on language, customs, and history. "The royal court has many rules," explained Mina, a kind teacher assigned to them. As the princess's bonded protector, Jin will need to know them all. Jin worked hard to learn everything. The bond with Nari helped. Sometimes, he would just know things without being taught. "It's like I can remember places I've never been," he told Hyun. Hyun was busy too. He spent hours with the ship's engineers, learning their technology and teaching them about Earth's systems. "Their computers are amazing," Hyun said during dinner one night. "They use crystal-based processing that's thousands of years ahead of ours." Jin noticed that everyone on the ship treated him with respect. At first, he thought it was just because of Nari, but he soon realized it was more than that. "They respect humans," Nari explained. "Your kind adapts quickly. You solve problems in ways we don't think of. That's valuable." One day, Ambassador Tai invited Jin to his private quarters. The room was simple but elegant, with strange plants that glowed softly. "You have adjusted well," the ambassador said. "Better than we expected." "Thank you," Jin replied. "The bond helps." The ambassador nodded. "That is part of what I wish to discuss. The bond between you and Princess Neri is stronger than any we have seen before." "Is that good?" Jin asked. "It is important," the ambassador said. "Our people have grown, predictable over centuries. We need new perspectives. Your human mind works differently. Together with Neri, you might help us find new solutions to old problems." Jin thought about this. "You mean the coup? Nari's cousin taking the throne?" "Yes, but also larger challenges facing our civilization." The ambassador looked serious. "We have advanced technology, but have lost some creativity. Some fire." The ship entered the Taeyang system a few days later. Jin and Hyun gasped as they saw the three moons orbiting a beautiful blue-green planet. "My home," Nari said softly. "Taeyang Prime." As they approached, other ships came to escort them. Through the window, Jin saw cities of crystal and light spread across the planet's surface. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Jin whispered. Neri smiled. "Wait until you see the royal gardens. I played there as a child." Jin realized he had seen the gardens already, in his mind, through Nari's memories. The thought made him smile. The ship landed at a tall spire in the center of the largest city. A group of elegantly dressed officials waited for them. "Ready?" Nari asked, squeezing Jin's hand. Jin took a deep breath. "Ready." They walked side by side down the ramp, followed by Hyun and the ambassador. Jin felt thousands of years of history and culture all around him. But he wasn't afraid. With each step, he felt more certain that this was where he was meant to be. "Welcome home, Princess Nari," said one of the waiting officials, bowing deeply. Then, to Jin's surprise, the official turned to him and bowed just as deeply. "And welcome to you, Royal Protector Jin. The Queen Mother awaits you both." Jin and Neri followed their guides through tall crystal hallways. The palace walls glowed with soft light. Hyun walked behind them, his eyes wide with wonder. "Your grandmother saved herself when the coup happened," their guide explained to Nari. "She hid in the old temple where even your cousin's forces would not dare enter." They stopped before a large door made of blue-white material that seemed to flow like water. "The Queen Mother waits inside," the guide said with a bow. The doors opened silently. Jin felt Nari's heart racing through their bond. Her emotions washed over him. Hope, fear, and love mixed together. The room beyond was simple but beautiful. Plants with glowing flowers lined the walls. In the center sat an elderly woman in white robes. Her skin shimmered with a deeper glow than other Taeyanjins Jin had seen. "Grandmother!" Nari cried, running forward. The Queen Mother stood and embraced her granddaughter. Jin felt Nari's joy as if it were his own. "My dear child," the Queen Mother said, "I feared I would never see you again." Then she looked past Nari to Jin. Her eyes were wise and kind. "And this is the human who saved you, who now carries our royal mark." Jin bowed deeply. "I am Jin, Your Majesty." The Queen Mother approached him. She touched the mark on his wrist gently. "Never in our history has an outsider carried this mark," she smiled. "But perhaps it is exactly what we need now." Over the next few days, Jin met with the Council of Elders. These were the oldest and wisest leaders of Nari's people. They listened as Jin explained how he had found Nari and formed the bond with her. Hyun helped too. He showed them Earth technology and suggested ways to improve communication between the two worlds. "Your friend has an impressive mind," one elder told Jin. "He sees patterns we miss." Meanwhile, evidence of the cousin's crimes was gathered. Many loyal subjects had hidden proof of his betrayal. "Da has broken our oldest laws," the Queen Mother announced during a formal council. "But we must avoid civil war." Jin felt uncertain. These were not his people or his customs, but through the bond, he understood their culture better than any human ever could. "May I speak?" Jin asked. The elders nodded, curious to hear the human's thoughts. "On Earth, we have a saying, 'Justice without mercy is just revenge.'" Jin paused. "Punish the cousin for his crimes, but spare his followers who were just following orders." The Queen Mother looked thoughtful. "What do you suggest?" "Offer him exile instead of death. Let him live, but far from here where he can do no harm. Show your people that the royal family values life, even the life of those who have wronged you." The council chamber filled with murmurs. This was not their usual way, but it offered a path without more bloodshed. "The human thinks differently," one elder said. "This is why the bond with an outsider brings strength." 1 year later, Jin stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. So much had changed. Da had accepted exile. Nari had taken her place on the council, with her grandmother still serving as Queen Mother. Hyun had established the first official communication system between Earth and Taeyang. Professor Lee had visited twice, bringing news from home. "Happy?" Nari asked, joining Jin on the balcony. Jin nodded. "I never thought I'd find a place where I truly belonged." Through their bond, he knew she understood. The emptiness he had carried since his parents' death was gone. Here, among the stars, he had found a new purpose, a new family. The Queen Mother joined them, placing one hand on Jin's shoulder and one on Nari's. "Our ancestors believed that sometimes souls are born in the wrong world," she said gently. "Perhaps yours was always meant to find us, Jin." Jin looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world of his birth. But here was where he had found his home. "Thank you for saving me," Nari said softly. Jin smiled. "Thank you for giving me a family in return."